This is Gardening in America, and I'm Ed Hume. Today we're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at Sol y Sombra, and I'm with the owner, Beth Miller. I've noticed on the property some beautiful art pieces.
Thank you. I'd have to name Tom Joyce as our first local artisan to do many light fixtures and the front gate and the bell, and Dan Naminha that did Pueblo Dancer. And I would like, of course, to name Alan Hauser.
Yeah, they're absolutely beautiful pieces. What's unique about gardening here in the high desert?
There's no water. No topsoil.
Right, but you've kind of corrected that. I noticed that, for example, your biosystem down below for the control of some of the water waste here at the place.
In-house, we call it flushing meadows.
Oh, is that right? What it is really a process of recycling, isn't it? Because
Yes.
You're reusing the water.
Well, you know, the water on planet Earth is very nearly a closed system.
Yes.
There's nobody making fresh water. It's cycling, and we have more people. So it looks like someday we'll be forced to use sewage, which is a uncomfortable topic. All the things that you and I don't want to talk about are filtered off and go into a septic tank that's carried away.
Yes.
And I'm of the opinion someday they'll bake that up and it'll return as something important. How to use leftovers.
And you've done it beautifully here, because not only are you recycling in that respect, but you're also recycling kitchen waste and
Slop.
slop.
We're heavy into slop.
All right.
It's probably our thing, the only thing we've ever made that could make money, from a very recipe of manure and slop and clippings and dirt and different things. In 90 days we can produce a very fine-grained dark topsoil.
Yes.
That's pest resistant.
And the other thing that there's so many things here that in 3 minutes we can't possibly cover it all, but you have a magnificent solar greenhouse.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Ed Masrias, he helped in the design, although there was a committee.
And in there, I believe you have one plant of particular significance.
Oh, we do. We have a seed from the Dalai Lama.
Yes.
He gave us 6 seeds. 3 did not sprout, 2 were weak, and 1 survived. And it is said to be a seed from the original Bodhi tree that the Buddha sat under to get enlightened.
The place is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing it with us. This is the time of the year when we spend more time indoors, so it's always nice to add some color to the home. And there's some great flowering plants that provide flowers for quite a period of time. This is the Reiger begonia, and if you go to Europe, you'll see almost every home will have one of these in the windowsill because they flower so nicely over the fall and winter. And they come in a broad range of colors, the Reiger begonias. Here's another nice one, and this is called the Peruvian violet. That's the most predominant color, and it's very pretty because of the yellow centers. But there's also available in a white variety as well. And they do flower for a long period of time, so really a nice plant for the home. And then if you have a cool spot in the home, this is a plant that you might enjoy using, and that's the evergreen azalea. And the beauty of them is that they're heavily budded, so if you choose them when they're in bud, they'll last for a long period of time and provide you lots of color in the home, but they do require a cool area. Now they tend to dry out quite rapidly, so it's important for you to check their watering needs, and one of the ways to do it is just like I'm doing here, holding it up. When it's heavy, you know it has enough water, but when it's light, then it's in need of additional water. But a cool room is ideal for it. And here's another one for a cool spot in the home for color. It is the cyclamen. And look at the foliage of the cyclamen. It's almost as pretty as the flower. And if we look down deep into the foliage, look at there, all the buds yet to come, so it's going to flower for a long period of time. Cyclamens, again, come in a wide range of colors as well. And for a hot room in the home, maybe the little miniature roses. This is a variety called Charming Parade, but there are lots of miniature roses. And then next spring you could put these out into the garden. You can see how they're loaded with buds, and yet there are some flowers already out. So they're going to flower for a long period of time, giving them lots of bright light in the home. And like all the flowering plants, you want to check their watering needs probably every 2 to 3 days. And kind of for seasonal color, it's pretty hard to beat the decorative or ornamental peppers. They come in such a wide range of colors. Now these are edible, but since we don't know what's been sprayed on them because they've been greenhouse grown, I wouldn't suggest that you eat these at all. They're really decorative ornamental plants, but very, very attractive ones. Now, here's a hibiscus, which is a very attractive plant also for winter color in the home. They'll flower better in the bright lights of summer and spring season, but they also do flower on a limited basis during the winter. And that gives you an idea of just a few of the plants that provide indoor color at this time of the year. Add them to your home to add a bright spot of color to the home during the winter months. This is a great time of the year to select some of the berried plants. You know, the plants that have berries during the fall and winter season are really attractive plants to use in the garden. Plus, they're an excellent source of food for the birds. And here are just a few. I went through the nursery and quickly gathered just a few of the berried plants. But this is a variety of barberry, and it's a variety called Ruby Glow. Isn't that gorgeous? And the foliage on this during the summer season is kind of tricolor. It's red with a little bit of pink and rose in it. It's really very, very pretty. The berries in the fall are outstanding. Here's an excellent ground cover plant. Does especially well in the shaded part of the garden. It's called wintergreen, Gaultheria procumbens. And the berries are edible, but they're bland and they really don't have much taste at all. Here's another nice plant, the Cotoneaster family. This is a variety called Coral Beauty that's really outstanding. You can see a young plant like that just covered with berries. Really very, very attractive. And here's another variety. This particular one has gray foliage. In fact, it's called the gray-leafed Cotoneaster, an evergreen variety as well, so it holds its foliage all 12 months of the year. But you can see the berries are just gaining their color, so they'll be much prettier in just a few weeks, or actually a month or 6 weeks down the line. So they'll provide lots of color from the berries alone, but then the foliage and the interesting growth habit is pretty too. And look at here. I found this little variety of San Jose English holly, and the berries are just gaining their red, but you can get an idea when you have a plant this small that has that many berries, you can imagine what it's going to be like when it gets larger. So this would be an excellent type of a holly to use in the garden to provide lots of color, not only during the growing season, but especially during the holiday season, during the fall and winter months. And here's a blackberry here. This is in fact a huckleberry. But look at how many berries there are on that plant. And of course there again is an edible berry plant. So it serves as food not only for us, but as for the birds as well. And really a nice plant. Here's a plant family that is used a lot. And you don't see many red berries on this plant because if you look very closely there, the berries are immature and not yet red. But this is a great variety. It's called Red Elf, and it's a dwarf variety of firethorn. Now, all of the firethorn family, the tall ones that we often use up against a fireplace or a fence or a wall, have gorgeous berries. But here's a variety that stays very low and yet provides lots of color. These are only a few of the beautiful fall and winter berried plants that are not only beautiful in the garden, but serve as excellent food for the birds during the winter season. And now's a good time to choose them. Time to think about mulching your flower and shrub beds for winter protection. And right now, as we go into the autumn, is a great time to do it because it offers a blanket of protection over the root system of your favorite trees and shrubs. And what I'm doing now is loosening the weeds and trying to eliminate them before I put the mulch material down. Also, I would take a minute and cut back the heather to make them bushier for next year, and they'll look a heck of a lot better too. It's important because wherever we make a pruning cut like this on the heather, is what's going to happen is you're going to get 2 to 3 times more growth, and that means then next year 2 to 3 times more flowers, and you're going to have a much bushier plant as well. So to take a minute out to do that is a good idea as well. Now, we're all ready to apply the mulch, and this is a project that's really easy to do, but there are a couple things you have to keep in mind. I'm going to use bark in this particular case, and I'll just dump it out here on the soil, like so, and then move it around in this case with my hands, kind of the way I want it. Now here's what's important, is where I spread it out here, it doesn't matter if it's 8 inches deep, but when I get down around the plants here, then it's important that I use just a little over the root system. You know, maybe a ½ an inch or probably even 1/4 of an inch would be better right around the base of the plant. Because if we cover the root system with too much bark, then we cut off the air and fertilizer to those little fine feeder roots. It'll do more harm than good. So be very careful. And look, I spread all over the plant here. We want to be sure that we get that off and freshen the plant a little. And then again, so important that I've got to emphasize that. Not much around the plant itself, but out away from the plant, it really doesn't matter how much bark you use. And of course, you can use straw and you can also use sawdust for this job. See how much better that already is beginning to look? And by the way, you don't have to do this by hand, and you always need to wear gloves because of the slivers and bark. But what you can do as well is to actually rake this with a regular steel rake or even a plastic rake. I should get these lower branches again, see? That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's so important that they be exposed. And if you apply it right, it not only improves the appearance of the whole planting area, but it also provides the winter protection that those plants need. It's an easy job, and right now is a great time to get that mulch in around your plants to give them the winter protection they need and to improve the appearance of the beds as well. This is a great time of the year to give some attention to the garden, to get it ready for the fall and winter months ahead. And one of the things that we want to do at this time of the year is when the annuals are through flowering, is to actually pick them out and see how much that improves that appearance of just that small area. Also, we've got some of the annuals that are still flowering, so why not get rid of these old flowers that look kind of ugly off of the plant and just take advantage of the new buds that are coming on. See, I've removed that, and look how much better that looks. Same thing here. We'll do just take a minute and get rid of these old flowers. Whoops, I don't want to get that bud. There, see how much better that looks? I'll just take a couple more off of here. And at the same time, whenever you remove the flowers like that, it keeps the plant flowering for a longer period of time because it hasn't completed its cycle. Hasn't gone to seed, in other words. Here's another good example. We should be wintering our geraniums, but you can see the buds are coming on. So why not take off these old flowers? See how much that'll improve the appearance of that plant? Get some of those old leaves off too, because they kind of are distracting as far as the appearance of the plant. See what a difference that makes in just a few seconds. You can make all the difference in the world in the appearance of the plants in the garden. Now, I noticed here the chrysanthemum also looks a little bit ragged. We do the same thing. We just go in and cut off the dead flowers. That allows us then to expose the buds below, and first thing we know, we'll get even more flowers from below. Now, let's also go back and take a look at the rose here. See, kind of a beautiful plant earlier in the season. It looks kind of ugly now. Rose professionals recommend that at the end of September or the end of October that we cut the roses back at waist high. And that's very easy said. This bud is not developing very well, so I'm going to cut it off completely. Same with this one. We'll let the other buds develop. It's very easy to say that. The problem is that if we cut, for example, this rose back at waist high, we'd be cutting off all those beautiful flowers. And, who wants to do that? Those are gorgeous. Those will make a beautiful bouquet for in the house, won't they? So go ahead and let them develop properly, I think. And any of the other daisy flowers that we have, for example, this is a marguerite. I'd cut a few of the dead flowers off there to encourage the other buds to develop. And that's just a basic care. You'll notice one other thing, though, here that I kind of want to finish with is the weeds in the garden. This happens to be buttercup, and boy, this will just take over. One weed in there, I took out about 6 others, little babies of the original. And the clover the same way. Let's get those out before they flower and go to seed. Now's a good time to get busy in the garden for the fall and winter months ahead. This is the autumn season, one of the prettiest seasons of the entire year. And I'm surrounded by autumn flowering plants. Look at the gorgeous pot dahlias. They flower so late into the season. And then the winter flowering pansies, and they come in a wide range of color. And remember last month we talked about the beautiful hebes and how nice they are. They're just at their peak of bloom right now during the fall season. And of course the mums. There's some gorgeous mums in varying colors and different flower shapes as well. But our plant of the week this week are the flowering kale and the flowering cabbage, and they're really some gorgeous ones. Look at these, in fact. These are the peacock type of flowering kale. And the landscapers tell me these are the ones that last the longest in the garden. They have a nice texture, don't they? And then here's the feathered type of flowering kale. Very, very pretty. And they last for a long time as well. And then the flowering cabbage and the flowering kale. Gee, they are so beautiful in the landscape. And you can use them anywhere. These can go in your flower and shrub beds. They can go in containers and go in window boxes. You can mix them with all these other fall flowering plants if you want to. It's totally up to you. They're gorgeous plants to use in the garden for color. I like to use them, in fact, near the areas where I plant out my spring flowering tulips and daffodils and hyacinths, and use them also in combination with the winter flowering pansies. The flowering kales and flowering cabbage are just absolutely beautiful for color at this time of the year. And then as the weather gets cooler, of course, the colors intensify even more, making them a great show for the fall and into the winter season as well. Our plant of the week, the flowering kale and the flowering cabbage, beautiful plants for the landscape. We're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I'm with landscape designer Ben Haggard. Ben, what is your specialty in landscape design?
Well, I do something known as permaculture design, which is the adaptation of the science of ecology to the work that we do in design.
Now, on this particular site, then, tell us a little bit about the project.
Well, what we intended to do here was design a model ecological house. So we began by assessing exactly what the needs of the site were, placing the house in a place that made it safer from fire and wind and things like that, and also made it more energy efficient. Beyond that, the house is made out of locally available recyclable materials like straw bales and bamboo.
Oh, wow.
And finally, it's passive solar design.
Now, what is native here?
Well, we've got a mix of things here. Close into the house, mostly we're emphasizing plants that are both beautiful and productive in some way, mostly food plants like asparagus and fruit trees and herbs and even vegetables. And then in rings out from the house, we're emphasizing native shrubs like chamisa and Apache plume, things like that, things that actually provide for their own needs in this climate and in many cases produce nitrogen in the soil.
I noticed, in fact, and you kind of mentioned it as well, that there are a lot of edibles in this area.
Yeah, the idea is to create a garden that's both very attractive at the same time that it's using all of that energy and time that we put into our gardens to produce something.
Sure. And tell us a little bit about your ideas here as far as the bio-sewage treatment.
Well, that's an interesting aspect of the project. We take all of the sewage from the house and we run it into a tank that's about 2 feet deep, filled with gravel. The water never comes up to the surface, so that you never have problems with contamination. Then we plant plants into that surface of gravel, and the roots go down into the water. And we choose the plants we do because they're swamp plants, basically. They pump oxygen down into the water zone, which supports the microorganisms that clean up the water. And what was polluted sewage comes out as clean water, which we can then use to irrigate trees and shrubs.
And I noticed, for example, you've used the cattails, but that also creates another environment for the native animals, doesn't it?
We're in Santa Fe, so this is a very cold, dry climate. By having those kinds of plants in a marshy situation, we've greatly increased the amount of available habitat for birds and insects and other plants.
Thank you, Ben, for sharing this project with us.
It's a pleasure, Ann.
That's all the time we have today. Hope you can join me at the same time next time for Gardening in America. And remember, our relationship with the planet today is tomorrow's future. Have a great week.